आप लोगों को स्क्रीन नजर आ रही है, ये स्लाइड?
यस सर।
जी सर।
यस
यस
सर।
सर।
अच्छा, तो यार ये
सर आवाज नहीं आ रही है।
अभी आ रही है आप लोगों को आवाज?
यस
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 सर,
सर।
अभी
सर।
जी
ठीक।
सर, आ रही है।
अच्छा अच्छा।
नहीं सर, नहीं आ रही।
थोड़ा सा आप
अस्सलाम
लोग,
वालेकुम सर।
वालेकुम अस्सलाम, थोड़ा सा आप इसको वो वेट करें ना।
हाँ सर ठीक
तो
है, और स्टूडेंट्स आए।
स्टूडेंट्स अभी जाग रहे हैं।
अच्छा, आप लोगों को स्क्रीन नजर आ रही है? मुझे नजर नहीं आ रही, कहाँ चली गई पता नहीं।
सर, सर आ रहा है।
सर मुझे भी नजर नहीं आ रही।
हमें तो आ रहा है।
हमें आ रही है स्क्रीन पर।
ये आप लोगों के मोबाइल में फॉल्ट है ना यार, क्यों नहीं समझते हो?
अब
बस मुंह
दोबारा,
बंद करके चुप बैठ जाओ।
दोबारा
सर
से
अब मुझ
शेयर।
हमसे अभी ठीक हो गया सर।
अच्छा, चलिए, वो कहते हैं कुफर टूटा खुदा खुदा का। तो बिस्मिल्लाह रहमान रहीम। वेलकम माय डियर स्टूडेंट्स। आप लोगों की इस सब्र का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। इतने दिनों से आप लोग इंतज़ार कर रहे थे और चीज़ें जो है वो सेटल डाउन नहीं हो रही थी। बहरहाल, देर आयत दुरुस्त आयत, वी हैव स्टार्टेड आवर फर्स्ट लेक्चर टुडे एंड लेट्स जस्ट, यस, सो टुडे वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट लिबरल ह्यूमनिज्म। जैसे कि आपको बताया है कि पिछले दो तीन इंट्रोडक्टरी क्लासेस में वी डिस्कस दैट we are going to talk about literary criticism in during this semester, and in this semester, during the course of this semester, we are going to talk about different schools of thought in literary criticism. And today we are going to start with liberal humanism. It's a school of thought in literary criticism. Basically, in literary criticism, we have different lenses to view the literature and language. और इसी सिलसिले में जो लिबरल ह्यूमनिज्म है, दैट इज द फर्स्ट स्कूल ऑफ थॉट विच वी आर गोइंग टू डिस्कस टुडे. So studying liberal humanism in literary criticism is very much important because it highlights the focus on individual experience, emotions, and choices. Mind you, we are talking about literary criticism and we are talking about different lenses to view that literary literature in critical lens. So today we are going to use liberal humanism lens. Yeah, we are going to talk about what does liberal humanism do to literary criticism. तो बेसिकली जो लिबरल ह्यूमनिज्म है, इट हाईलाइट्स द फोकस ऑन इंडिविजुअल एक्सपीरियंस। जैसे कि इसके नाम से जाहिर है, इट इज कॉल्ड लिबरल ह्यूमनिज्म। सो लिबरल इज बेसिकली connotation of liberty, and liberty means individual freedoms, individual experiences, and humanism basically means belief in humanity in a raw form. So it highlights the focus on individual experiences, emotions, and choices. It explores the themes of human dignity, freedom, and autonomy. It also provides context for understanding character motivations and ethical dilemmas, offers a lens to analyze how texts reflect or change or basically challenge humanist values. जिस तरह हम basically literature में we talk about different kind of creative literature which are produced by the members of any given community or society. तो फिर उस लिटरेचर को हम मुख्तलिफ लेंजेस से देखते हैं। लिबरल ह्यूमनिज्म इज वन ऑफ दोज लेंजेस। बेसिकली it offers a lens to analyze how texts reflect or challenge our human values in a society. So liberal humanism can reveal insights into how literature portrays human nature, morality, and societal norms. We are going to explore a foundational tradition in literary criticism. Liberal humanism is often called the traditional approach because for centuries it was simply the way people read and judge literature. So liberal humanism जो है, it is also called a traditional approach क्योंकि throughout the history people have been using this traditional approach to judge the literature. Now we will look at this, its origins, its core beliefs, how to practice it, and also why it became the target of intense critique in the late 20th century. So let's begin with the definition of or an explanation of what liberal humanism is. It's not the invention of a single theorist. Basically, throughout the history, different people have used this approach. It's a tradition that developed over time from roughly the 18th century up to the mid 20th century. It was the dominant common sense way of understanding literature. During the lecture, I would request you to just concentrate, and afterwards we can have a discussion session. अगर किसी के कोई questions हो तो उसके बाद आप लोग जो है ना वो पूछ सकते हैं. So for the time being, let me just elaborate
Yes, sir.
the basic concepts. So from roughly the 18th century up to the mid 20th century, it was the dominant common sense way of understanding literature. The core idea of liberal humanism is that literature expresses timeless universal truths about human experience. It purposes Its purpose is both to delight us with its beauty and to instruct us morally. Notice the emphasis on the individual author, the individual reader, and the individual characters we encounter in a text. The key figures about this liberal humanism or who shaped this traditional uh, who shaped the traditional approach or the tradition to look into individual liberties. Those figures are the most common are Matthew Arnold, T.S. Eliot, F.R. Lewis, and romantic poets like Wordsworth. तो बुनियादी तौर पे जो लिबरल ह्यूमनिज्म है ना, इसकी कंसंट्रेशन इंडिविजुअल लिबर्टीज के ऊपर है. सो दे वांट टू observe, they want to analyze the text or literature with the lens of human liberty. जो individual liberty है, इसमें इंसान के जो individual autonomous जो उसके decisions होते हैं, ये उसकी बुनियाद पे लिटरेचर को जज करना चाहते हैं. सो जो लिबरल ह्यूमनिज्म है, बुनियादी तौर पे इट्स नॉट अ सिंगल थ्योरिस्ट बट अ लॉन्ग ट्रेडिशन. जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि ऐसा नहीं है कि किसी एक खास थ्योरिस्ट ने या एक खास राइटर ने इस अप्रोच को स्टार्ट किया. इट्स बेसिकली it's a tradition. There are so many different thinkers throughout the history of literature. So to understand liberal humanism, we need to go back to the Renaissance. The Renaissance humanism involved a rediscovery of Greek and Roman texts and a shift of focus from God to human beings as the center of intellectual life. So the dominant way या जो main concern है इस liberal humanism का, they bring human beings into the center or focus of literature rather than otherworldly. जिस तरह अगर आपको याद हो तो प्लेटो था, जिस तरह उसके व्यूज हैं अदर वर्ल्डलीनेस के बारे में. इट वाज बेसिकली अ काइंड ऑफ रिवोल्ट अगेंस्ट दैट अदर वर्ल्डलीनेस. दे स्टार्टेड कंसंट्रेटिंग अपॉन ह्यूमन लिबर्टी. सो रेनेसांस से बेसिकली ये चीज रीडिस्कवर होती है ग्रीक एंड रोमन टेक्स्ट की. शिफ्ट ऑफ फोकस फ्रॉम गॉड टू ह्यूमन बीइंग्स as the center of intellectual life. That's where the term humanism comes from. Then in the Romantic period, the emphasis shifted to emotion, imagination, and the figure of poet as a unique genius. Though it's a long tradition, but its versions have been different during the course of the time. पहले it was the concentration upon human liberty. जो इंडिविजुअल लिबर्टी है, उस सेंटर ऑफ द यूनिवर्स वाज नॉट, इट वाज शिफ्टेड फ्रॉम गॉड टू ह्यूमन बीइंग. एंड द नेक्स्ट basically version of this was romantic. During the romantic period, the emphasis shifted to emotion, imagination, and the figure of the poet as a unique genius. Wordsworth famously described poetry as the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. And finally, in the Victorian era, Matthew Arnold gave literature an almost sacred role. In a time of declining religious faith, he argued literature could serve as a criticism of life and a force for culture and social stability. अब ये जो तीनों इसके different variants है ना, the first one was a shift from God to human being, the second was upon emotions, and the third was basically the third version during this Victorian era was during the time of decline of religious faith. The literature was considered to be something which can rescue, which could serve as a criticism of life and a force for culture and social stability. So, पहली बात कि human beings are more important than other worldliness, like people talk about, like Platonic जो वो है version है, center of universe ideas हैं, and it's something about. The liberal humanists brought that focus on down to earth to human beings. Secondly, they considered human emotions and feelings of the utmost importance. And it's not like, it's just uh, this universe is working in a mechanical way. It's not like that. It is dependent upon individual freedom and human emotions. And then also, this is the very human liberty who can rescue religion by criticizing his own life and a force for culture and social stability in order to restore the faith, in order to basically uh, save human being from meaninglessness. The liberal humanist diverted the attention toward the criticizing of the life, the way we are living our life. So when we focus on that, we can basically, in a kind of critically evaluate our own selves. And once our own selves, our own liberties are restored, once they are secured, then we basically have a social stability and we can have a cultural value. So the liberal humanists brought together these trends: respect for classical learning, celebration of individual creativity, and belief in literature's moral and cultural power. सो हम लोग चूंकि लिटरेचर को क्रिटिकली देखना चाहते हैं, इवेलुएट करना चाहते हैं, तो उस सिलसिले में हमारे पास जो लिबरल ह्यूमनिज्म का लेंस है ना, इसने बेसिकली तीन चीजों को, तीन स्ट्रैंड्स को इकट्ठा किया है इंसान की अंडरस्टैंडिंग के अंदर। और उसमें जो पहला एक स्ट्रैंड है, दैट इज रिस्पेक्ट फॉर क्लासिकल लर्निंग। Obviously, when human being is free, when you can question everything, you can learn you can use classical way of learning, like you can critically evaluate, you can question everything. Then the second strand was celebration of individual creativity. So when you are free, you basically, you are in a position, when you are free, you are in a position to critically evaluate your own life. And this celebration of your individual freedom equips you with a kind of a creative ability, and you can carry on with your creativity, your creation, and through your imagination. And that basically moves to the third strand, which is the belief in literature's moral and cultural power. So ह्यूमन फ्रीडम बुनियादी तौर पे इसमें, अगर आपने थोड़ा सा एग्जिस्टेंशियलिज्म को पढ़ा हो तो साथ ने कहा था कि मैन इज फ्री, मैन इज फ्रीडम. सो एवरी सिंगल creativity, including literature, demands from human being the autonomy, the power, the freedom. Without freedom, without autonomy, human being cannot get anywhere. They cease to be creative, and they cease to have belief in moral values. So first we need to, human liberalism would say that first we need to liberate human being फ्रॉम द अदर वर्ल्डलीनेस. बाकी जो चीज़ें हैं दुनिया की, उससे हमें इंसान को उसके क्लेंचेस से आज़ाद करना है. एंड देन we'll be able to become more creative. And once we are creative, then we can produce literature which is full of moral and cultural power. So does it make sense? मतलब चूंकि ये हर एक चीज को ना, लिटरेचर में जितना लिटरेचर को ये इवेलुएट करते हैं ना, दे आर बेसिकली ट्राइंग टू रिड्यूस एवरी सिंगल थिंग टू human dignity and human freedom. Human freedom and human dignity is basically the prerequisite for creativity, and that creativity would basically lead towards believe in a moral and cultural power, and that could be produced by any given literature. So moving forward, we basically, अगर आपने पिछली स्लाइड में देखो तो it's not a single theorist but a long tradition, dominant way of reading literature from 18th to mid 20th century. The core idea is literature is timeless, universal human activity, so we cannot bound it into any given era or any time. It's not time bound. ठीक है. Purpose is to delight. Its purpose is aesthetic pleasure and instruct moral guidance. अब आप देखें कि जब इंसान के पास फ्रीडम नहीं होगी तो उसकी एस्थेटिक सेंस जो है बेसिकली दैट वुड सीज, एंड लाइकवाइज ही वुडंट हैव एनी मॉरल गाइडेंस. सो बुनियादी तौर पे फ्रीडम प्रोवाइड्स हिम विद एस्थेटिक प्लेजर, एंड it basically provides him with the power of moral guidance. The focus is on individual human experience. So personally जितने लोगों के जितने human beings के अपने experiences हैं, they basically bring those experiences into their literature, focus on individual human experience, and that would lead them to aesthetic pleasure and instruct them to moral guidance. ठीक है. इसमें की फिगर्स जो है वो मैथ्यू आर्नल्ड है, टी एस एलियट है, लिवाइस है, विलियम और सैमुअल जॉनसन है. सो ब्रीफ हिस्ट्री में रेनेसांस ह्यूमनिज्म, रीडिस्कवरी ऑफ क्लासिकल टेक्स्ट, शिफ्ट फ्रॉम गॉड टू ह्यूमैनिटी एज सेंटर. ठीक है. 14वीं से 16वीं सदी तक रेनेसांस ह्यूमनिज्म जो था उसमें क्लासिकल टेक्स्ट को दोबारा रीडिस्कवर किया और उनकी शिफ्ट फ्रॉम गॉड टू ह्यूमैनिटी. रोमांटिक एरा में इमोशंस, इमेजिनेशन एंड इंडिविजुअल जीनियस, जैसे वर्ड्सवर्थ ने कहा स्पॉन्टेनियस ओवरफ्लो ऑफ पावरफुल फीलिंग. एंड इन विक्टोरियन एरा we have Matthew Arnold literature as criticism of life and literature as substitute of religion. Basically जो उस वक्त रिलीजन चूंकि डिक्लाइन पे था तो बहुत सारे लोगों ने जो एक एम्प्टीनेस फील किया जो मॉरल वैल्यूज रिलीजन प्रोवाइड करता है, बिकॉज पीपल वर फेड अप ऑफ रिलीजन, so they gave up to everything, including those moral values provided by the religion. So in this way, Matthew Arnold and brought criticism of life and literature as a substitute for religion, not in the context of rituals, but providing a moral framework. जिस तरह रिलीजन हमें एक मॉरल फ्रेमवर्क देता है ना, तो इन लोगों ने कहा कि वी कैन गेट दिस गाइडेंस फ्रॉम आवर लिटरेचर, एंड दैट इज ओनली पॉसिबल थ्रू ह्यूमन फ्रीडम, and realization of that freedom would provide us with creativity, and that creativity will basically lead us to aesthetic pleasure and moral guidance. ठीक है. The literary work is self-contained, unified, and object. The core tenet, the autonomous text, ये कहते हैं कि जो text जो है ना, the first major belief is that the literary text is self-contained object. Think of the famous image of well-wrought urn, a beautiful unified artifact. According to this view, all the elements of a text, character, plot, imagery, language, work together to create one harmonious meaning. मतलब ये लोग कहते हैं कि जो ऑटोनोमस टेक्स्ट है ना, टेक्स्ट जो है ना, वो ऑटोनोमी बेसिकली मींस लिबर्टी, फ्रीडम. सो टेक्स्ट इज फ्री, इट इज ऑटोनोमस. द फर्स्ट मेजर बिलीफ कि टेक्स्ट इज अ सेल्फ कंटेन्ड ऑब्जेक्ट. मतलब इट इज सेल्फ कंटेन्ड, इट इज नॉट, it does not have any, it does not accept any impact from outside, and basically all the elements of a text, correct, including characters, plots, imagery, language, they work together to create one harmonious meaning. ये सारी चीजें जो है ना टेक्स्ट के अंदर जो जितनी भी हैं, चूंकि ऑटोनोमस है तो ये सारी चीजें मिल के बेसिकली एक यूनिफाइड जो है ना वो क्रिएटिव हारमोनियस मीनिंग को जन्म देते हैं. सो the goal of criticism is to elucidate this unity. मतलब जो हम चूंकि लिटरेरी क्रिटिसिज्म पढ़ रहे हैं तो लिटरेरी क्रिटिसिज्म के हवाले से ये लिबरल ह्यूमनिस्ट का कहना ये है कि व्हेन वी आर basically working to critically evaluate our literature, the goal must be to elucidate this unity. What unity? The self-contained unified object. So literature should be taken as a unit which has self-contained and unified objects. It has character, it has plots, it has imagery, language. इन सबको हमने collectively लेना है. That should be the goal of criticism, not dissecting it into pieces and then try to evaluate it. So इनके नज़दीक जो literary criticism है उसका goal जो है बुनियादी तौर पे to elucidate this unity. The critic's job is to uncover this unity, to show how everything fits importantly. Meaning is considered stable. It's there in the text, waiting to be discovered through careful analysis. This is why close reading becomes so central. The critic's task is to interpret the work in its own terms. ठीक है, आपको समझ आ रही है ना इस बात की कि how they basically started from the individual liberty and they are bringing it down, trickling it down to the critic's task. मतलब एक जनरल ह्यूमन लिबर्टी की बात होती है, फिर उसके बाद because of that liberty we are more creative. That creativity provides us with aesthetic values and moral guidance, and then uh, basically literature replaces religion in the context of that moral guidance. अब उस लिटरेचर को जो लिटरेरी वर्क है उसको हमने इस लेंस से ऐसे देखना है कि इट्स अ होल, इट्स अ यूनिट, इट इज सेल्फ कंटेन्ड यूनिट, इट हैज डिफरेंट फ्रैक्शंस, इट माइट हैव डिफरेंट कैरेक्टर्स, प्लॉट्स, इमेजरी, लैंग्वेज. इन सब को व्हेन दे वर्क टुगेदर दे क्रिएट वन हार्मोनियस मीनिंग. सो वी कैन नॉट study literature in isolation. We have to, the goal of criticism has to elucidate this unity. What is the unity between character, plot, imagery, language? So it basically requires very close reading of the literature. Without close reading, you cannot basically realize this unity, these different parts, and how do they work together. So in order to do that, you have to focus uh, on close reading of the literature, and a very careful analysis can be discovered after this close and central study. So that would basically equip us with आप लोग अगर आप माइंड न करें तो अपने माइक्स को सब ऑफ कर दें, क्योंकि बीच में आवाज आती है तो फिर डिस्टरबेंस पैदा होती है. तो द सेकंड कोर टेनेंट, पहला आपको अगर आपको याद, ऑटोनोमस टेक्स्ट. पहला इनका सेंट्रल जो वो है ना क्लेम है, वो ये है कि टेक्स्ट जो है वो ऑटोनोमस है. इसके अंदर जितने डिफरेंट फ्रैक्शंस हैं उनको हमने एज अ यूनिट के तौर पे स्टडी करना है. वी नीड क्लोज रीडिंग एंड देन वी कैन बेसिकली इंटरप्रेट. उसके बाद द सेकंड कोर टेनेंट ऑफ लिबरल ह्यूमनिज्म इज timelessness and universality. According to them, the text of literature is not time bound, and it is not a culture or a kind of a group bound. It's basically timeless and universal. Right from beginning, it is always relevant. It's not that like in one era, for example, in medieval periods or ancient times, that literature was relevant and now it's irrelevant. No, they say that because they believe in human liberty, and human liberty, they focus everything. They